Why, hello dolls. Thank you so much for watching what I hope is going to be the first of many videos on various topics in gaming, TV, film, and other things that are in the nerd category, brought to you by me, the one and only Nerd Doll. So, what better way to start off this channel than talking about an episode from one of the greatest shows of all time? The Twilight Zone.
Show that introduced a whole generation to science fiction and chain smoking.
So while I'm home, thanks to the pandemic, I've been watching a lot of videos on YouTube, and some of them are those list videos. You know, the ones that rate the best and the worst of whatever the subject is. For this particular episode, it was the best of the Twilight Zone episodes that inspired me to talk about one that is near and dear to my heart, but yet never shows up on these lists for reasons, I suppose. Well, that episode would be none other than number 12 Looks Just Like You. Now, this episode is about a young teenager named Marilyn, who is on the cusp of her 19th birthday. Now, in this world, when someone turns 19, they undergo a procedure known as the transformation, which makes them beautiful. Marilyn and her mother, Lana, are looking at state-approved models number 12, who Marilyn's mother chose for her transformation, and model number 8. What is normally an exciting time for a young person, Marilyn just has no interest in undergoing the transformation, as she is happy with the way she is.
If I didn't want the transformation, I wouldn't have to have it, would I?
At first, everyone thinks she's just reasonably nervous, but it soon becomes clear there's more to why Marilyn doesn't want to have the transformation. So Lana takes Marilyn to see Dr. Rex, as she can't understand why her daughter doesn't want to undergo the procedure. He does a test on Marilyn's mental state, which reveals she is highly intelligent and of sound reason. Confounding to him, but lets us know that Marilyn is completely fine. She's normal. But Marilyn is worried that they will force her to undergo the transformation against her will. But Dr. Rex assures her that isn't going to happen. All they're going to do is just find out why she doesn't want to undergo the transformation so they can fix it so she will undergo the procedure. Yay! That's just great. That's wonderful. We're not going to force you to do it, but you're going to do it. So Dr. Rex takes her to an authority on the transformation named Professor Sigmund Friend.
I am Professor Friend. Sigmund Friend.
Yeah, that's his name. He reveals that it was their forefathers that had determined that ugliness was the reason behind much of the struggle and strife in humanity. So the transformation was created to fix that solution. By eliminating ugliness, you're eliminating all of human turmoil. But the transformation does more than just make you beautiful. It extends the human lifespan. It makes you immune to most diseases, which is something we could definitely use right now. And it keeps you young. And Marilyn is fine with all those parts of the procedure, just as long as she can stay who she is. But Professor Friend makes it clear that's not an option. Now, what I haven't mentioned yet is that Marilyn often cites her late father's thoughts on the transformation throughout the episode, and it's clear they're the source behind her resistance to the transformation.
I think it's time you tell me where you're getting these radical ideas.
Daddy once said...
Your father was a handsome man.
I know, but he thought about things, and he read books. We talked a lot, just the two of us.
Everybody talks.
No, I mean about real things, not just about electronic baseball or super soccer, and where to buy your clothes or how to fix your hair.
Well, is that bad, liking sports, buying new clothes?
No, of course it isn't. But, Uncle Rick, there's got to be more to life than just that.
We learn that Marilyn's father shared with her what is considered banned literature, written by the likes of Shakespeare, Shelley, and Dostoevsky, to name a few. Professor Friend is extremely displeased that Marilyn has been exposed to such smut and makes her stay within the facility. Because again, they're not going to force her to undergo the transformation, but she's gonna undergo it. And that is when it clicks to Marilyn.
Before I went to sleep, I remembered something that Father said. He said, when everyone is beautiful, no one will be, because without ugliness, there can be no beauty. Mother, don't you understand? They don't care whether you're beautiful or not. They just want everyone to be the same, that's all.
To conform to what the higher authorities consider a beautiful, upright citizen. So Valerie, Marilyn's best friend and who has already undergone her transformation, as you can see here she chose model number 8, she decides to talk with Marilyn alone and is extremely insensitive about Marilyn's late father. Marilyn angrily tells Val that her father didn't die in an accident, which her family has led everyone to believe, but he actually committed suicide as he felt the transformation robbed him of his identity.
Valerie, he didn't die in the Ganymede incident. My father killed himself because when they took away his identity, he had no reason to go on living.
But unfortunately, Valerie just doesn't understand where Marilyn is coming from.
Did you feel anything? Well, of course, silly. I feel good. I always feel good.
Later that night, Marilyn tries to break out of the facility, but she only winds up in the operating room where Dr. Rex and a nurse are waiting for her. A few hours later, Lan and Val wait for Marilyn after the operation, where Dr. Rex calms their nerves by telling them that they've made improvements to the transformation to help the younger people adjust to the process. We see Marilyn come running out, now resembling Val, but something else is different about her.
And the nicest part of all, Val, I look just like you.
The transformation has truly robbed her of her identity. Gone is the independently minded young woman, and in her place is another vain, shallow drone. Now, despite that the episode is ultimately about conformity, Rod Serling's narration focuses much more on the beauty aspect of the story.
What young girl wouldn't happily exchange a plain face for a lovely one? What girl could refuse the opportunity to be beautiful? Portrait of a young lady in love. With herself. Improbable? Perhaps. But in an age of plastic surgery, bodybuilding, and an infinity of cosmetics, let us hesitate to say impossible.
That might be part of why it's not considered one of the best. But regardless, this isn't even the first time the Twilight Zone has done an episode criticizing the concept of beauty. Oh yeah, you know which one I'm talking about. The Eye of the Beholder is one of the most popular episodes of the Twilight Zone, and is always featured on the best of lists, for good reason. And you should definitely watch the original if you haven't. Now, the story is about this woman whose head is wrapped entirely in bandages due to a procedure that will fix her deformed face. If this surgery fails, she'll be sent away from regular society to live in a ghetto with all of the other uglies. Ugly people really have it awful in the Twilight Zone, don't they? We, the audience, are sitting there wondering, what does she look like? How horrifying is she based on what the nurses and doctors say about her face?
To see, nurse, I've looked underneath those bandages.
So have I. It's horrible.
No, I mean deeper than that. Deeper than that pitiful, twisted lump of flesh. Deeper even than that misshapen skeletal mask. I've seen that woman's real face, nurse. The face of her real self. It's a good face. It's a human face.
I understand. But I must confess, it's easier for me to think of her as human when her face is covered up.
But the time comes at the end of the episode for the bandages to come off, and we see that she looks completely normal. In fact, she's quite pretty. Except, this is the Twilight Zone, and in this world, this is what is considered normal. Now, they cleverly had all of the other characters' faces obscured throughout the entire episode to hide this twist from us.
It really makes you think about what those people would taste like.
And as I mentioned, she looks gorgeous. You think so, I think so. And that's the point of this episode. Beauty is something that is ultimately subjective. I mean, think about it. We all have our individual preferences on certain physical traits that we find desirable.
Years, I gotta mix it up.
Which one did your wife like? Does she like this one, or does she like this one?
I will be 100% honest, and I'm not making a joke. She much preferred that guy. That guy's jolly.
guy.
Yeah, the fat guy.
And even different cultures have their own beauty standards that evolve over time. I'm sure you've seen those videos where they do various popular hairstyles and makeup for men and women in various countries all over YouTube. Those were pretty big a few years ago. So one thing that I noticed when watching number 12 Looks Just Like You is that the two youngest characters in the episode wind up choosing model number 8 as opposed to model number 12, which is stated to be more popular. I thought it was interesting as it seemed to convey that model number 8 may soon become the ideal model for women to choose for their transformation. But all of the men in the episode have chosen model number 17. I interpreted this as a subtle commentary on what it means to be a beautiful woman changes over time, but for men, a classically handsome look never goes out of style. Oh, I didn't mention the year this episode takes place in.
For want of a better estimate, let's call it the year 2000.
That's right, it was 20 years ago. Yeah, a couple of other noteworthy items about this episode is that those who've undergone the transformation don't like to be reminded that, despite their appearance, they're actually quite old.
Who is it?
Hi, Uncle Rick.
Take it easy with that Uncle Rick stuff, will you? What are you trying to do, make me feel old?
I'm sorry. I forgot. Are you two going out? I don't think so, Mrs. Coverley. You promised to call me Lana, remember? Oh, yes, Lana.
Another thing is that near the end, Val mentions how she's had 11 dads and that Marilyn has had 10 since her father passed away. That's a lot of daddies. Oh my, can you imagine having that many dads? Oh my goodness. So this episode was filmed in 1963, and divorce was still a taboo for many married couples. Now, divorces at this time were only legal if there was a fault in the marriage. Now, the fault could be mental instability, abuse and cruelty, and adultery, with the latter being the most common reason for divorces. But in the 1960s, it was becoming known that many married couples were colluding to bypass the fault system, that it was agreed the law needed to be changed. It was the National Association of Women Lawyers that pushed the American Bar Association to pass no-fault divorce, which didn't become legal until 1969, when California was the first state to pass it into law. I suppose the writers thought in a world where everyone is beautiful, lives longer, and with the attitudes of divorce changing in the present day, they imagined that getting divorced and remarried would be a new way of dating in the future. I mean, that couldn't be further from the case. But it was something that I considered fairly amusing. It should be noted that Marilyn's mother and father's marriage lasted much longer than most do, which was considered odd. Now, there's another unfortunate and likely unintentional implication is how overwhelmingly white this world is. We should be fair, this is a very small cast of only 4 actors. And this was filmed during the early 60s, where TV networks were not fond of casting anyone who isn't white in leading and supporting roles. So that doesn't necessarily mean that that is reflective of the creator of the Twilight Zone. Rod Serling had tried to bring the tragic lynching of Emmett Till to television, recognizing the medium as a great way to recognize issues of social justice. But unfortunately, advertisers and the networks didn't want to alienate white, predominantly Southern audiences. It didn't help that when word got out he was trying to bring the Emmett Till story to television, that a lot of white supremacy groups filed complaints to the networks. And even when he was trying to obey the Censors' changes to the scripts, his attempts of trying to discuss the racism behind the tragedy just didn't work to his liking. If you want to know more about this, I'll leave a link in the description. But The Twilight Zone was born from Serling having learned on how to discuss social justice issues for television.
Well, you're not going to be able to cop a plea or chop an axe because you're going to be obviously working so hard on the Twilight Zone that, in essence, for the time being and for the foreseeable future, you've given up on writing anything important for television, right?
Yeah. Again, this is a semantic thing. Important for television? I don't know. If by important you mean I'm not going to try to delve into current social problems dramatically, you're quite right, I'm not.
You have to dress it up so it's less obvious. But let's get back to number 12. As I mentioned earlier, we only see 3 of the state-approved models, and these could just be the white ones. But it is certainly possible that non-white citizens have to select the exact same models as Marilyn. Now, the transformation doesn't change a person's DNA, as we see that Lana prior to her transformation looked just like Marilyn. Considering of when this episode was written, the history behind the Twilight Zone, and even looking at racial politics today, it's quite possible that the forefathers, one of the ugly things they wanted to remove was racism, and their solution was to make basically everyone white. So to say the transformation is another form of eugenics. Now, I know some of you may be thinking I'm stretching my analysis, and I probably am, because I don't think it was intended to be a discussion on race at all. It's just another disturbing thing to think about in this world.
Portrait of a young lady in love. With herself. Improbable? Perhaps. But in an age of plastic surgery, bodybuilding, and an infinity of cosmetics, let us hesitate to say impossible.
There is a lot to pull out of this episode that it really has stuck with me after first learning of it and then watching it. Now, I really want to focus on the critique of how people who aren't naturally born beautiful try to achieve it. And I think that is true for most of us. I do want to preface, though, that I do find my analysis to be rather heteronormative, but when talking about American beauty standards in a general manner, I do think we value beauty in a binary way. I do think it is something that is changing, albeit slowly, that we're becoming more open to non-binary identities and diversity in body types. Now, it was around the turn of the millennium where reality TV really started to grow as a genre, and it's become the beast that it is today. Now, when it comes to the subject of plastic surgery, I would say Botched is probably the most well-known. But there were also game shows that focused on plastic surgery, like Bridoplasty. This is where brides-to-be would compete to get cosmetic surgery as a reward. They would actually get the surgery on the show and then compete in the games again while healing from the surgery they won. Yeah, no, it was a real show. It only lasted one season. But one of the most controversial reality shows of all time is one called The Swan. I actually do remember when this was airing. It only lasted 2 seasons, but it was pretty reviled at the time. It was basically a group of ugly duckling women who, with a panel of plastic surgeons and experts, would compose a design plan to transform the contestants into a swan. And I mean it when I say contestants. This was a game show of sorts. Each episode focused on 2 women, where one would be eliminated for reasons, and the one left would go on to compete in a beauty pageant to become the titular swan. And I really do feel for some of these women. They did, after all, sign up for this show. And to feel so low in confidence about their looks and not having the money needed for the cosmetic surgery you need or want, my heart goes out to them, and I understand where they're coming from. But one woman in particular, named Lori Arias, who had lost 150 pounds in the 90s, she had a lot of loose skin she wanted removed. But the show had her undergo far more surgeries than any other contestant. Now, what you see that aired on the show is her crying tears of joy at her transformation. But once the cameras were off, she was screaming she wanted her face back and that she didn't recognize herself anymore. And who can blame her? She was completely different than the woman she was when she started. And things didn't get much better at home with her friends and family members because they became either jealous or uncertain on who she had become. Her own sons thought she didn't look like their mother anymore. And I do want to just introduce Lori here because I will be coming back to her later in the video, so just put a pin in that there. Some people might consider cosmetic surgery a rather extreme procedure, but I would say that it's much less stigmatizing than it was 20 years ago. But extreme methods of making oneself more beautiful isn't new. Body modifications are as old as humanity itself. Corsets were a commonly used garment that both men and women would wear to shape their torsos, but it's usually associated with women. Now, originally I was going to be talking about how damaging corsets were, but when trying to get some footage, I stumbled upon Victorian, Edwardian, Regency-era fashion YouTuber Carolina Zabrowska, who dispelled a lot of the myths about corsets. They were not nearly as extremely damaging to women's bodies as we believe today. I'll leave a link to her video in the description down below. When you think about it, it does sound weird that women would willingly wear such a garment that would make it difficult to breathe and function normally for nearly half a millennium. It doesn't really help that a lot of pop culture purports this myth, but women as a group would not be wearing something so suffocating all the time when they have important things to do throughout the day. Corsets serve the purpose that modern-day Spanx, padding, and undergarments do. There have been women, though, who have undergone surgery to remove their ribs to get a smaller waistline. And when it comes to cosmetic surgery, it is a rather expensive option that most of us just simply can't afford. Now, what wasn't around when I was a kid is something that has become so large online. The drama makes headlines. Makeup and beauty tutorials. I don't watch them regularly, but when I was looking for footage for this video, I did find myself being suckered into some of them. I'll be honest, I don't really enjoy wearing makeup, in large part because I can feel it on my skin. I do have to wear it on occasion in which I just do a light everyday look. I do really enjoy some of the more costume, special effects looks that people come up with. But watching some of these tutorials, even the so-called lazy looks, these girls put on an awful lot of product on their face when it isn't really necessary. And most of these looks wouldn't be appropriate or too much in everyday situations. Now, I think women shouldn't be pressured into wearing makeup. I can't blame her for doing so. And it's sort of funny, a lot of straight men think women being into makeup is ridiculous and they laugh at us. But well, the idea of us not being into makeup is something they don't like either. And then, like, their ideas of what women look like without makeup is interesting. Like, I think there was an internet article a few years ago that showcased that men think what is typically a nude makeup look, or what I refer to my light everyday look, is what a woman looks like when she's not wearing makeup. And, well, when she's doing the more, Instagram looks there, they don't like that. It's a bit too much for them. But when a woman is truly not wearing makeup, we look sick and diseased. Are you okay? Honestly, I always feel weird when talking about this subject. Makeup is something that women do feel like they have to wear to be presentable, and I've heard of women wearing it even to bed. Which, I can't imagine wearing makeup to bed. It can't be great for your skin, but at the same time, I understand there's a social importance for a woman to wear makeup, particularly in the workplace where she won't be considered professional if she chooses not to wear any. Now, while I did mention earlier that beauty is ultimately subjective, I would be lying if I were to say there isn't a collective agreement on what is considered beautiful. And this is where we start to see all sorts of problems pop up. What's great about this day and age is that we are seeing a growing movement of body acceptance in our society, where even Barbie dolls have curvy models. But ladies, let's be real here for a moment. We all know what the standard is for us.
As we all know, women only have one acceptable body type.
I do want to say how much a person weighs and how large or small their body is shouldn't be a determination of their attractiveness. But with that being said, fat is often used as a synonym for ugly.
Asterisk, asterisk, the word fat is fine, if you're nice about it.
This is something that even young children are starting to make an association with. And I want to be honest with you, I'm not exempt from this line of thinking, especially when it comes to how I think about myself. Now, I'm going to confide in you what my highest weight ever was. 225 pounds, and I'm 5'3". In the first season of The Swan, apparently the woman that weighed the most prior to the plastic surgeries was 195 pounds. I weighed more than the heaviest woman on The Swan at one point. I've actually lost quite a bit of that weight in the past 2 years. And I honestly don't know how much I weigh right now, as I don't have a bathroom scale since I moved. And yes, I'm scared to check. Mostly in part because of the pandemic, I know I have gained a bit of that weight. But I know it's significantly less than 225 pounds. I do judge part of my beauty on my weight or how fat I perceive myself. The more fat I have, the less beautiful I feel. And it doesn't help that I have been told that I would be pretty if I just lost weight. So for those of you watching this who have struggled with your weight, I completely understand where you're coming from. I have been there. I'm still there. And even if I were to reach my body goals, I may always be there. As I mentioned earlier, number 12 does focus on a Eurocentric standard of beauty. While not an intentional point of the episode, makeup and beauty does have a racist side to it. When you go to your local store where you purchase your makeup, whether it's a cosmetic store, drugstore, or supermarket, you may notice that the foundations and powder available aren't all that dark. Even in the 90s, when many makeup brands like Revlon and CoverGirl had a black model as their face, there still weren't darker shades available. And many black entrepreneurs trying to start up a brand made specifically for black women would be turned down for loans as they were told the demand wasn't there. With the launch of Rihanna's Fenty Beauty line and with brands and marketing wanting to be woke, we're now starting to see shades made for a multitude of darker skin tones. Even still, most lines still have a ton of fair to medium shades that are nearly identical and just a few darker shades. Many makeup artists aren't taught how to work on darker skinned models and actors and wind up lightening their skin, then matching their natural complexion.
The thing I'm most weirded out by is not even just being like thicker and having a bigger butt and bigger boobs, it's the lighter skin.
It also doesn't help that there is a growing trend of blackfishing on social media sites like Instagram. This has to be extra frustrating for many marginalized women whose natural ethnic looks they may be bullied over, felt to be ugly, and having to deal with relaxing their hair or wear wigs just to have a professional appearance in a white privileged world, and then see all these white women try to look like them and be praised for their beauty.
The only way black hair found cultural acceptance was when it was on white people's heads. When Bo Derek wore braids in the movie 10, she was hailed as starting a cross-cultural craze. But in the same era, black people were punished for wearing the same braids.
Now, I'm well aware I don't have any first-hand experience in this field, and I'm portraying this issue in broad strokes when it deserves far more discussion. But when I think of how beauty can be a means of conformity, I think the best, or more accurately worst, of this is when it comes to how women of color, especially black women, are seen. Don't worry, fellas, I didn't forget you. I will state that I don't think men are scrutinized on their appearance the same way women are in general.
It's easy for us men. We have 4 acceptable body types. Skinny ripped, jacked ripped, dad bod, and fat, if you're funny.
But I know guys do feel inadequate about their looks too. I'm not on the particulars of what men themselves would like to look like ideally. My thinking is that it is a muscular body type because that seems to be the masculine ideal. Now, I don't personally agree with it, but that does seem to be what people like their men to look like. Have some muscles. Not too much muscles, mind you, just the right amount. And I know when it comes to getting those muscles, a lot of men struggle with it. I remember reading a men's health magazine once for a project in college, and I came across an advice column where one guy talked about how he was struggling to get abs. You know, that six-pack. The advice was essentially don't be too worried about getting abs, from what I recall. But I know that's something guys working out want to achieve. The thing is, though, a lot of the abs you see that are not shopped in or sprayed on is actually the guy sucking his gut in. It's literally a flex. And I know it certainly doesn't help men when the media calls guys who have lost some muscle but are still really fit, like Jason Momoa and recently Zac Efron, to now having dad bods. Okay, no. David Harbour is a far more accurate portrayal of dad bod, thank you.
This is a great honor. Under the entry for dad bod in Merriam-Webster, they put your picture under dad bod. Congratulations. No, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I mean, you know, some people win Emmys.
Yeah.
Hey, but look on the bright side, fellas. At least a man with a less than ideal body can still be a sex icon and have a cute title like dad bod. But I would say the most common beauty problem among men is male pattern baldness. This is something that a lot of guys start to struggle with in their late teens, and 2/3 of men will face by the time they reach 35. Then there is Instagram. Ooh, Instagram. It's the social media app I enjoy using the most, but it feeds on so much of my own insecurities. I'm often scrolling through the search menu to see what random stuff pops up in my feed, and I often see beauty tutorials and posts of women clearly showing off their assets. Now, it's become common knowledge that a lot of what we see on Instagram isn't real. Celebrities have professional photo editors who work on their photos prior to posting. Many people use apps like Facetune to remove flaws and enhance features. And many influencers reveal their sucking in the gut and angle tricks to look great in their photos. But that isn't what my brain sees. It sees another flawless beauty that I will never achieve via natural means. The thing that grinds my gears is a sexy photo with a caption that thinks it's fooling me into thinking this photo isn't to titillate men. But I do have to acknowledge there is internalized misogyny that I and many other women have when we look at women on social media. And when I see these posts, I'm honestly jealous and bitter because I don't look like that. And even though many of them may be using filters and light photo editing, many of these women do have to work hard to maintain that physique with a strict diet and regular exercise. We also don't really know their mindset. They could also be dealing with extreme self-esteem issues on their behalf as well. This might just be something they do to try and make themselves feel better. Just because they're pretty doesn't mean they don't have problems.
There's something about the lip area that I'm not sure about. It's too much.
It's all natural.
Yeah. I give your face a 5. I give your body a 9 because I think you're very sexy.
But the good thing about beauty, if you aren't born with it, at least you can buy it. I mean, just take a look at famous people who aren't actors and even actors themselves at the beginning of their careers and then further down when they've gained some wealth. Rob McElhenney famously made fun of this for the 8th season of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia by gaining 50 pounds for what is affectionately referred to as Fat Mac by fans.
I was watching a popular sitcom. It was an ensemble comedy, and I noticed that it was late in this, maybe like 5th or 6th season of the show. It's a very successful show. And I noticed that all of the characters looked more handsome, or just simply better looking. They were in better shape, they had better clothing, they had better haircuts, they were tan, they had better teeth. And I thought, I'd never seen a show in which the characters or the actors specifically tried to look worse as the show progressed. And I thought that if there was ever going to be a show in which that would make sense, then this would be it. So I embraced it.
He lost that weight really quickly once going back to his normal routine, but would get ripped in later seasons, playing straight into the trope he once made fun of. Interestingly enough, when asked, many of these actors, like Hugh Jackman and Rob McElhenney, will express how unenjoyable maintaining such a physique really is.
You've got a particular regimen for when you're going to do the shirtless scene. I heard you've got what's the...
I find out the date, which is the shirt off thing, and it's about a 3-month run up. So you've got to be in pretty good shape, but the 3 months before is very specific. And it finishes with dehydration. Don't do this at home.
First things first, if you have a job, like a 9-to-5 job, quit that. Now, do you like food? Forget about that, because you're never gonna enjoy anything you eat. Alcohol?
It's like what they say, beauty is pain.
Biggie? She's entered what we call the glamour coma.
And beauty is something so many people badly desire that many of us are willing to go through extremes just to gain a fraction of it. There's so many snake oil salesmen and corporations that have shelled out worthless products to make us lose weight magically and get that glow up we desire. Advertisements are made to make us feel ugly so we can buy their products to feel better. Diets are another product that people hype up, and every couple of years we get a new one that is the real diet to lose weight and be healthy. And all of these are sold to us by the fake pretty people on Instagram too.
My prep began weeks ago with head-to-toe chemical peels, eyebrow freezing, and waterboarding.
Waterboarding? Yes, Goop recommended it.
noticed everything?
Who wouldn't want that magical solution to our ugly woes? Who wouldn't want a cream that would instantly clear up your acne? A magic pill or tea leaves to get rid of all unwanted, unnecessary body fat? A way to gain muscles without working out at the gym for months and with all that sweaty, exhausting work? I bet we all know what part of ourselves we would instantly get fixed if someone offered us one free cosmetic surgery or similar magical solution. And once we do get that full part of our body fixed, what happens then?
I was just struck with a really great epiphany. I've always wanted to look like this, but seeing this now in front of me makes me realize I'll always have a problem with my body because I just thought that my stomach still looks fat. It really shows how me being so hypercritical of myself won't translate into being more self-confident. If you have a problem with how you look, that's a way deeper issue than just changing your outsides.
We're back to where we started. And this is part of why people get addicted to plastic surgery. At the end of the initial procedure, you're thrilled with the results and you feel that high of dopamine, but then your brain chemistry returns to normal, and suddenly the changes you've had done just don't do it for you anymore. So you decide to get another procedure, either getting something else done or go bigger with what you had done previously, risking serious health complications or death. That's because the actual thing that is making you not feel beautiful is inside your mind. And that requires so much more work to improve. There's a well-known mental disorder called body dysmorphia. People who suffer this disorder hyperfixate on minor or unnoticeable flaws. And they may try to get this fixed with plastic surgery, but if the results don't meet their expectations, it winds up making their dysmorphia worse. Back to Lori from the Swan. Even though she did scream at how she didn't recognize herself when the cameras cut off, she did feel an esteem boost shortly afterwards. But eventually, all of her old psychological issues returned. And because she didn't recognize herself, she did gain some body dysmorphia. While on the Swan, she did have access to a therapist, but it was mostly to deal with the loss of her husband than esteem issues. There was also no follow-up to deal with the psychological issues that resulted from the plastic surgery. All the weight Lori winded up losing in the 90s, she eventually gained back over time. And when she was asked if she would do the show again, she said she would. And I totally get where she's coming from. She got a boost of self-esteem and dopamine whenever she went out. It felt good to be considered beautiful by other people. And she even liked some of the results of her surgery, especially her chest and how good she looked in low-cut tops. We place such value on a short-term good feeling and being praised by others for our appearance that we'd be willing to risk the damage and pain that follows. And now we come to the part where I talk about myself, and I explain why I'm a doll, because I know you're wondering. Now, the doll aspect is that I feel like I can utilize my creativity and help me stand out from other channels. But just to get out of the way, here's what I actually look like. I'm an actress in real life. Yeah, I am an actress, okay? I may not work all the time. I've done things. And with your help, I can get closer to my dream. No, seriously, like, nowadays with influencers being a thing, a lot of casting calls on websites and stuff are really hoping you have a huge following on social media. It's like right there in the casting spec. And I don't, so like and subscribe. And I know what you're thinking. I look fine, but I don't think I look fine. I absolutely hate how I look in photos and on camera. It also doesn't help that a lot of my old on-camera work was back when I weighed a lot, which I know is silly, and I was on the lower end of being plus-sized, but it was enough for some to make me feel ugly over it. And the acting world isn't much better.
Well, they don't pay a movie star to look ugly, baby.
Now, I'm still early in my career, so I haven't had anyone in the industry say anything disparaging about my appearance so far. But on casting websites, I often see them looking for women who are attractive, fit, sexy, gorgeous. And then some of them require swimwear to be worn, and I have to feel comfortable wearing that. And I just know they're not going to want me, so I don't submit to them. And a lot of actors, even the good-looking ones, don't like how they look on camera and in photos. I had a friend edit my video demo for me because I couldn't stomach looking at myself. Even my headshot is retouched because I had some pimples that day. And this is part of why I specialize in voiceover. With voiceover, I'm not confined to how I look, but my true ability to act. This channel is a way for me to work on my voiceover craft. That's where the doll comes in. I don't want to be just voiceover, and I can't draw a little illustration like most other channels do, so I use a doll. And I know it's been rough in terms of the voiceover for this first video, but that's part of the process. This is me practicing and working on it, and it is something that will get better over time. Part of why I like Number 12 Looks Just Like You is that I can relate to Marilyn. I like to pride myself on my own independent mind and enjoy the intricacies of literature, film, and interactive media. People have told me I'm smart. But honestly, there are times I wish I were dumber. Well, I certainly would like to think a lot less at times. It would be nice if there was a machine that could give me the body that is as close to objective beauty as possible. How grand it would be if there's a procedure that could brighten my mood so it isn't so short-term. To always be happy, to always be beautiful and flawless.
What young girl wouldn't happily exchange a plain face for a lovely one? What girl could refuse the opportunity to be beautiful?
Oh, to be a doll. Thank you so much for watching what is my first video essay. I know I didn't go super in-depth on this subject. Beauty is a topic that would make for a long video for me. I already added so much to this script so many times, and I just have to get it over with. But this has been quite the learning experience, and I hope to be making more of these videos for you all to enjoy. Encouragement from you is strongly recommended though, so please like, subscribe, and tap the bell to stay notified. And thanks for watching, dolls.